Just casually leaking Discord messages here, but I saw this morning and it baited me to make this POB. So, I mean, I think there's something to it. I've written the config for this build already for what this would be with a level 20 gem for elemental hit. And then I'm using explosive arrow level 1 because it's a base 100 and base 1.0 attack speed skill just to simulate what the damage would be like. Anyways, this is really similar to like a generic lightning arrow build, but it's basically just in elemental hit template. I think people going for wands are in for a really bad time compared to what you can get with bows. Bows are just so much better. But mostly because of a skill tree, right? The lightning arrow skill tree these days is hyper efficient, and this basically uses the exact same thing. There's a few differences, probably. So because you're playing elemental hit, you want to apply as many elements as possible, and I think that this build gets much stronger with interrogation. This gem lets you get access to Secret Suffering, that's 3 more ailments, and you can apply 2 different more ailments using skitter bots. Getting Ignite's probably really hard to do, so I wouldn't worry about that, but I think this core setup is really great because you do get passive shock chill, and then you have a lot of source of ailment scaling, including this wheel right here, non-damaging ailments on my boots over here, and then also running the 50% mastery here as well. So you get a lot of non-damaging ailment scaling. And I think as far as like anything that's non-Ubers, going for like a 4 Bertle is not unreasonable. And honestly, this app is kind of good too. Other things to note about this POB, not really too much to be honest. I mean, like, it's pretty standard for what I would think to do in a late day 1, early day 2 deadeye POB. I actually opt for Tanu Ahi. This is something that I know some people really like and some people really don't. And the reason I like this is twofold. Firstly, it lets you have this on bosses. When you're finishing your own Atlas, if you want to farm your own Void Stones, that sort of thing, this is a great pair of 1 Chaos Gloves that gives you perma Adrenaline, perma Onslaught. If you have a good setup. And the way that I do it is, first I'll run Blood Rage for the degen. I also use the Life Cost Mastery, but I use Rain of Arrows as Saturation on my Life Tap Mana Forge setup. A lot of people here will opt for a Frenzy of Onslaught setup, but this gives you 41 arrows per attack. It gives you so many more leech instances coming out, and just more opportunities for you to leech back your life, and also proc that 2-second Tornado Ahi for the Adrenaline, and the 4-second Onslaught. I just think it's really strong to go for. You also get Frenzy Gen off Mark on Hit. You don't have it like, you know, if you're not fighting rare monsters or like uniques, but honestly, I think this is more than enough. I don't really like the Frenzy step that much. That also gives you better access to LGOH and for more leech instances, just better recovery when you play this Roa Saturation setup over here. Otherwise, I'm setting up for a 2 elemental hit. The reason I'm doing this, the reason I'm doing a Mana Forge elemental hit rather than exploring like ballistas or whatever, is because I'm too lazy to try to change the config for a skill that is an elemental hit, and I don't really want to play ballistas if I was to play a bow build, right? Again, I'm probably not going to start this, but this is just like a sort of template to see what elemental hit would actually look like in the early game. Otherwise, it's pretty standard. This is like my defenses without guard skill on, so it's pretty solid, especially since you have sap from the interrogation, right? It's just really powerful because you have a ranged playstyle with bows and like elemental hits, basically like slightly worse coverage version of lightning arrow. Ascendancy, pretty straightforward. Gathering, Focal, Far Shot, and Endless. You know, this is just like really nice. 5 proj, I think should be decent. And then like the flash setup doesn't even flex anything either. There's a lot of things in here for later on, like slightly later, like Taste of Hate puts you in a really safe place. To the point where I would honestly be comfortable playing this thing in HC. I still wouldn't necessarily, just because like it's not actually that tanky, but you could survive for quite a while. You'd eventually probably die though. Before you go for Ancestral Vision, a build like this just progresses as your regular Lightning Arrow stuff. So I actually have a sub 6 hour 2-stone Lightning Arrow Deadeye run. Havoc has a 530 something, so there's a lot of resources if you don't know how to like level this kind of thing. But I think the core template is just something to look at. It's not too different than your generic Lightning Arrow setup, but if you haven't already, try to investigate the new Elemental Hit. Mechanically, it should be relatively similar to Lightning Arrow, and this is sort of where I'm ending up. You can also maybe opt for Barrage. I'm not doing that here, just because I do think if you're going to play this thing, you won't really be that focused on staying in a deep boss setup for that long. But this actually has pretty good single target. You can see 7.4 mil, like T3 bow. It's fairly strong, but honestly, you don't need that good of a bow either because Elemental Hit gives you some flat added damage. And the uniques are fairly easy to get, honestly, other than these, and this is all for like later game solves, right? So before you can play Lethal Pride, you have access to the Strength Notable here. You have access to 2-point Primal Spirit. You can run a Heavy Belt instead of a Stygian Vise. Before you get Interrogation, you just have a lot less damage, honestly. You just like don't have that much crit, but every bow build plays without that. And this, when you play Elemental Hit, just has so much more flat added from the gem already. And then finally, before Ancestral Vision, you just click Brine King over here, which gives you your Freeze Immunity, your Chill Mitigation, and plays Guard Con. Once you do have this, you can go for probably Rallycash is what I opt for. And then probably on this one, if you haven't been hit recently, Solaris. And then you have a pretty solid looking build. So yeah, just an idea of a template. POB's in here. If you need it, if you want to go build upon this, this is what I have. Maybe you'll make something far better. And I think Fubgun's going to make an actual Elemental Hit character coming up. His YouTube's linked. Go check that out. in like a day or two, I'm sure it'll be there because he's been really pining to start this thing.